CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Europe, live from CGTN in London. I'm Paul Barber.
And I'm Juliet Mann. The world's top two economies talk trade. China and the US agree on the importance of cooperation.
Trying to skewer the global meat industry, hackers launch a ransomware attack against the world's largest meat packer.
The European Investment Bank pledges $1 billion to the COVAX vaccine sharing programme.
And the world's top central bankers get together to discuss how to tackle the risks of climate change. China and the United States both agree on the importance of their economic relationship. That key line was reported by China's official news agency following a video call between Vice Premier Liu He and US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen.
It's Liu's second meeting in a week with leading US officials on the future of trade. Joining us now is John Terrett in New York. Good to see you, John. Now, I think frank is the word we're hearing across international media to describe the call. What else do we know?
Hey, Juliet. Hey, Paul. Well, of course, it's lunchtime here in New York, so we're kind of just gathering everything together to see what we can make of all of this. The second call, as you say, in 2 weeks, and frank is, I'm sure, one way of putting it. According to Xinhua, candid is another word that would be appropriate. And we know that they talked about the macro situation in the world. So that would be things like post-pandemic recovery in China and the United States, and indeed elsewhere. Also global GDP and regional GDP, global inflation, regional inflation, that sort of thing. And crucially, I noticed asset buying. Now, this, as you know, the Federal Reserve here is in the process of buying lots of US assets in order to prop up the US economy at this difficult time. The big question is, when will that start tapering off? And that's one of the things that Wall Street thinks about all the time. But Yellen made it very clear to Liu He, look, the US government will go on doing whatever it takes for as long as it takes in order to prop up the US economy. They also talked about the bilateral importance of the trade relationship, and this, of course, with one eye on 2028, when China is tipped by many economists to become the biggest economy in the world, something the US will try to stop, I have no doubt. But they do know that they have an organic relationship between the two, that they have to get back on track, that they have to return to some sort of stability after the disruption of the 4 years of President Trump. Juliet?
You talk about that organic relationship. So is the trade row turning a corner, John?
Yes, I think it is, and I'll tell you why. Because last week, when I was on the programme, we talked about Catherine Tai, the US Trade Representative, the new one appointed by President Biden. She spoke with Liu He last week in a virtual conversation. And we know that the position of the US Trade Representative is very, very important, certainly very important on a day-to-day basis. So she's leading the discussions which are going on behind the scenes all the time. But Janet Yellen is a bit of a different kettle of fish, really, because she is a really big gun. She is known internationally around the world. She's been on the world stage for a very long time. She was the head of the central bank, the Federal Reserve. She's now the Treasury Secretary. She is in complete lockstep with Joe Biden and his economic policies. So for her to make this appearance elevates the whole thing to the level of Liu He, who, as you know, is China's vice premier and also the main man when it comes to trade issues in China. So I think it's a sign of the work that goes on all the time behind the scenes, unseen and unreported, really, by most media. Now, there are issues, having said that. It's not all sweetness and light. China is very concerned that some of the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration are still in place, and that Chinese companies, particularly the mobile companies and the oil company here at the stock exchange, they have been banned from doing business with American corporations and American financial institutions, and some of those companies have been delisted here at the New York Stock Exchange. For its part, Washington is concerned that $200 billion pledged in phase one of the trade talks signed getting on for 2 years ago now. Not all of that extra $200 billion has been spent, and Washington wants to make sure that it is. And I think they also will want a complete review of Phase 1, which ends at the end of the year, before they move on to Phase 2. And there may be other issues thrown in there, like exactly how are we going to get along together when it comes to climate change and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think Janet Yellen elevates the discussion. I really do.
So what do the markets make of it? I mean, business obviously has a very beady eye on it all. So what's the reaction been on Wall Street so far?
I know. Well, you know, I have to say, I always feel a little bit embarrassed, really, because no reaction whatsoever. I'm sorry about that. You would think, wouldn't you? I mean, you would think that something as important as this would boost the markets or send them down, whatever happens. Nothing at all. And the reason for that, I'm afraid, that Wall Street is totally wrapped up in its own world at the moment of economic recovery, tapering, when will it start, what would it mean, inflation, all that kind of stuff. And right now, they're on a roll. Markets seem to be looking for a summer rally, and there's nothing but talk about that. So I'm afraid it doesn't really make the headlines here. I wish I could say otherwise. The Dow is up 1/5 of 1%, the Nasdaq 1/4 of 1%, and the S&P 500 by a similar amount.
Or maybe when they review that Phase 1, the markets will get that certainty they crave. John Terrett, thanks for the update.
Maybe.
In other news, the world's largest meat processing company has become the latest target of a sophisticated cyber attack. Abattoirs in the United States, Australia and Canada have been forced to close after the headquarters of the JBS Group in Sao Paulo was hit by a ransomware hack. It's the latest in a string of online attacks on key industrial and commercial targets in the US. JBS controls 1/5 of the meat packing market there. Alan Niskett is from the cybersecurity firm Recorded Future. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. How sophisticated was this attack, and what's known about the size of it?
So the attack probably wasn't very sophisticated in and of itself. Most of these ransomware attacks aren't that sophisticated. Instead, they rely on lack of security controls inside the plants. And it appears to have been pretty devastating inside the plant, being able to shut down not just the IT networks, but actually some of the lines where the processing is completed.
We do seem to be seeing many more of these ransomware attacks globally. How wide is the problem, and who is getting targeted?
Ransomware attacks are a huge problem. We saw a massive increase in 2020, and that increase has continued through 2021. And unfortunately, everybody's a target. So we've seen hospitals get hit. We've seen manufacturing, shipping, financial institutions, local governments, schools, colleges. There really isn't any industry that's safe from ransomware attacks. We've even seen network security companies that are cybersecurity companies that have been hit with ransomware attacks. So unfortunately, they go after everyone.
And what is being done to curb these crimes? And why don't governments seem to be getting a handle on it?
Well, it's hard. When you have nation-state actors, you can attacks that are sponsored by Russia or the United States or China or whoever. There are things you can do. There are steps that you can take. Whereas when you have individual actors carrying out these attacks, which is what happens in most of these cases, it's very hard. We don't really have a good framework for dealing with these kind of massive attacks. And unfortunately, most of these attacks are occurring from Russia-aligned countries. And right now, the Kremlin doesn't seem to want to do anything to stop these threat actors.
And these attacks really can affect citizens, everyday people like you and me, everywhere, can't they? Such as the potential meat shortages with JBS and recently with the attack on the Colonial oil pipeline.
I mean, absolutely. So, basically every ransomware attack now is a third-party attack. So we've seen in Australia, Lion Beverage got hit, and that disrupted delivery of beverages across Australia. In the United States, same thing with Coors that brews makes a bunch of different kinds of beer got hit, and that disrupted attacks. But even things like hospitals around the world have been hit with ransomware attacks, and they're forced to send patients away. Ireland just had a massive hit on its healthcare system, and that meant that cancer patients couldn't get treatment, and other types of recurring appointments had to be missed.
And how sophisticated are businesses getting at detecting hacks? And are companies now putting in adequate resources into protecting themselves?
There's sort of this have and have nots out there, where some companies have gotten really good and put in a lot of protections, while other companies still aren't taking it as seriously as they should, and they're not investing in security in the way that they should be. And we tend to blow this off by saying, oh, well, these are really sophisticated attacks. And they're not, compared to like a nation-state attack, they're not that sophisticated. They're using well-known vulnerabilities. They're, taking advantage of the fact that people reuse passwords, or that multi-factor authentication isn't enabled for a lot of these organizations, and they're using that to get in. The advantage the attackers have is they're persistent. They're trying anybody they can get in order to gain access into the networks.
Alan, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Alan Lisker there from Recorded Future. Thanks so much.
The UK has been given a green light to start the process of joining the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, following approval from member states. Britain's Trade Minister says the country will submit its formal application soon. The CPTPP removes most tariffs between its 11 members, which include Australia, Canada, Japan and Singapore. The UK asked to join the bloc in February as it sought to open new avenues of post-Brexit trade.
Etsy, the online retail site for independent traders, is buying the rival fashion site Depop in a deal valued at $1.6 billion. Depop, which specialises in the sale of second-hand clothing, has more than 4 million active buyers and saw revenue more than double last year. Analysts say the deal will give Etsy exposure to a younger generation of online shoppers.
China will run another trial of its digital currency, this time in Beijing. 200,000 people will each receive a little over $30 in their digital wallet through a lottery system. China's digital RMB is the world's first e-currency issued by a central bank. Previous tests have been carried out in different cities, although there's no timeline for a national rollout.
And shares in US cinema giant AMC are up more than 28% after the group raised $230 million selling stock to a top hedge fund. AMC, which has been at the centre of the so-called meme stock craze, says it sold 8.5 million new shares to Mudrick Capital Management on Tuesday, which the fund quickly offloaded for a profit.
Coming up next, just hours left ahead of a crucial deadline. But will Belarus press criminal charges against dissident journalist Roman Protasevich?
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to The Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Covering the world from 4 continents. A new horizon. Teams in Beijing, Washington, D.C., Nairobi, and London. Who connect, interact, and inquire to bring you the stories that matter to all. The Link, only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. As we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back. The UK Health Secretary is warning that fake news over vaccines is a deadly threat. He spoke at a global summit aimed at building confidence in vaccines. Let's speak to Andrew Wilson, who's in Oxford. Hi there, Andrew. Can you tell us more about this Global Vaccine Confidence Summit and what it's trying to achieve?
Well, this is all a build-up to the G7 leaders meeting in Cornwall next week. The health ministers meet tomorrow and Friday in Oxford University. And so Matt Hancock has led a separate conference the day before at Oxford University today, the Global Vaccine Confidence Summit, where he can kick off some discussions and bring what the UK has to bear on the vaccine argument and also the UK's concerns about the international and national vaccine situation going forward. And he did mention what he called this deadly threat of misinformation. Talk about that at the moment. First of all, what Matt Hancock outlined was the success of the UK vaccination programme, which he said rested on trust, on science, on knowing how to take risks, which was the huge investment programme the UK did last year, backing every horse they could find, putting money into any vaccine that was starting up. Some still haven't come to fruition, but of course the AstraZeneca, Pfizer and Moderna did prove to be winners. And also he talks about the teamwork within his department and within Oxford University. But I think what he concentrated on most was this idea of trust. Everyone knows that getting supply and getting logistics organised are crucial to a vaccination campaign, but you also need people to show up and have the vaccination, and that revolves around communications and trust, and he concentrated a lot on that today.
Britain's incredibly high levels of confidence around the vaccine aren't an accident, and they weren't something that we could take for granted. We had to win trust. Trust is a crucial component of any major project. And the way to win trust is through openness and honesty. Being open about what we know and also about what we don't know.
Now, the one reason why the Health Secretary is stressing this is because it's becoming clear that while the UK has had a pretty successful take-up, even you only go to Europe to see that it's been harder to persuade people to take vaccinations. Some polls even put America now, 1 in 3 people in America they think might be reluctant, if not downright resistant, to having a vaccination. And they've got problems in African countries they can see coming down the line and so on. They need to boost the campaign of information. Now, up until now, the international argument has been all about the economics of supplying vaccines, rich countries giving more money, supplying more doses to be distributed fairly around the world. Well, that's underway as well, and the G7 will talk about that. But they're also concerned now that without a better communications campaign around the world, we'll end up with black spots where people aren't being vaccinated and new variants can start to generate themselves, evolve and become a threat to the international pandemic control again. So I fancy that's where the UK government is leading the argument to start tomorrow with the G7 health ministers.
Andrew Wilson, thank you.
The European Investment Bank is increasing its support for the World Health Organization's COVAX programme, which provides COVID vaccines to countries in need.
The head of the EIB, which is the lending arm of the European Union, made the pledge during a virtual fundraising event being hosted by Japan and the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi. The bank will provide $1.1 billion worth of loans.
Osman Dar is project director at the Global Health Programme for the think tank Chatham House.
The program itself needs sort of close to $6 billion in order to, and that's what WHO has estimated to make sure everybody that's healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers, and all those that are at high risk get the get vaccinations, and this is based on not only the cost of the vaccine but also delivery and the logistical issues around training and getting the jabs into people's arms. But I think the broader issue is really how this is all priced and what can be done to make sure that the costs are low enough so that it can be sustainably done, especially in low and middle income countries. And there's a lot of debate and discussion to be had about how the pricing of these vaccines is actually being done and what could be done to reduce those costs.
The WHO has now approved the Sinovac vaccine for emergency use. How much will this boost the COVAX program, and how much impact could it have on cost?
I think it's a welcome addition, and again, on the issue of costs, having that, new vaccines approved means there's more competition and the costs can be lowered. What countries should actually be looking to do is to use their exemptions under TRIPS, which is an agreement around intellectual property, which allows them to then issue a compulsory license and manufacture at a much lower cost. So I think that's going to be a real issue in the future going forward. Countries need to be able to have their own manufacturing capacity. Every global region should have its own manufacturing capacity. China, for example, in partnership with Pakistan, has been training people in Pakistan to develop manufacturing capacity. So now Pakistan is able to also develop its own batches of vaccines, and the same kind of thing needs to be done across Africa. There needs to be almost a suspension of intellectual property so that poorer countries have the ability to manufacture this vaccine and do it in a quality assured sort of way. That way COVAX itself can purchase and procure from smaller manufacturers, local manufacturers, who can then deliver the vaccine more effectively at lower price. That's really the future to this sort of thing and making this kind of initiative sustainable.
Now, the UK has been hosting a global vaccination confidence summit. How much is vaccine hesitancy affecting global recovery from the pandemic?
I mean, vaccine hesitancy is a huge problem, and it's an issue in developing countries as well as sort of the developed world. And what we find is that usually it's an issue of trust between government and authorities and the communities that they're purporting to serve. In the UK, for instance, hesitancy is much higher in lower socioeconomic groups, in ethnic minorities, and so you need real strategies to bring these communities along to do the kinds of health promotion work within these communities, using community champions to engage with them to try and get uptake of vaccine rates higher. The other issue, as I was saying, is that there's a lot of misinformation on social media. There's the issue of communities and populations thinking that a lot of this is just excess profit taking by the pharmaceutical industry. So that kind of misinformation needs to be challenged as well.
The world's top central bankers are working out how the finance sector can tackle risks linked to climate change.
The governor of the People's Bank of China, Yi Gang, Jay Powell of the US Fed, and the ECB's Christine Lagarde are among those taking part in the Green Swan virtual conference. For more, Ryan Thompson is live in Frankfurt. Ryan, it looks like central banks are starting to take global warming very seriously. What's been said today?
Yeah, that's right, Paul. Slowly but surely, some of the world's biggest financial institutions and systems are really making this issue high priority. We've seen the European Central Bank here in Frankfurt say global warming is part of its key strategy with an expected review in September. The Bank of England is entering a new mandate where they plan to greenify their monetary policy. Across the Atlantic, the Federal Reserve is planning on has recently joined the NGFS, a collection of central banks focused on greenifying monetary policy. And it should be said as well that the People's Bank of China is planning climate stress tests in the next few years. So here we are. We have the attention of the world's 90 central banks. And though we've heard few commitments in this first day of conference, there are still two more days to go, with the heavy hitters coming on Friday, including the ECB's Christine Lagarde and Jerome Powell of the US Fed. So potentially we're eyeing big announcements there. That not to say we've heard from some pretty influential speakers today, including Kristalina Georgieva from the International Monetary Fund. She said, in speaking to banks, that the IMF is ready with advice on how they can greenify and be more ecologically focused in their monetary policy in the years to come. Take a listen.
We have to move forward on integrating climate into the work of each and every organization, and especially those that are dealing with policy decisions that affect the viability of our economies and the financial sector. So to put it simply, move the transition to the new climate economy forward, bring emissions down, and resilience up.
Now, that's the message from Kristalina Georgieva to banks. But people, including the former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, have also been in attendance with a different message for financial institutions and companies focused on getting businesses to adopt a more ecologically sound policy. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Many argue that the shift towards sustainability also represents the biggest and best investment opportunity in all of history. This is true for both governments and businesses. Investments in sustainability can not only forge a greener and cleaner energy future, they are likely to produce extraordinary and sustainable economic growth and improve the health and well-being of communities around the globe.
And Ryan, I understand there could be a deal which forces all listed companies to disclose their climate risks. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, exactly, Paul. Yeah, well, with the U.S. joining the NGFS and Jerome Powell in attendance of this conference, it does signal that the U.S., one of the big heavy hitters here, is serious, and commitment could be just down the road. The governor of the Banque de France, France's central bank, has spearheading those efforts, and he says that surprisingly, a deal is actually within reach. They've been able to reach some common conditions much faster than they had expected. He's suggesting that an announcement could be made alongside November's COP26 conference in the United Kingdom. But of course, it should be said here that in the case of France, in the case of England, there is a little bit of interest involved here because it levels the playing field. In the case of France, they've been required to disclose their climate exposure for a number of years now, and the same will be common law in England in the next cycle.
OK, many thanks for that, Ryan. Ryan Thompson in Frankfurt.
Another initiative targeting a greener future is Mission Innovation 2.0. Its aim is to accelerate public and private investment in clean, renewable energy and make it more affordable and accessible. Patrick Child is the chair of Mission Innovation, and he joins us now from Belgium. Thanks for coming on the programme. Talk us through this. What is this campaign in a nutshell?
Well, it's a very exciting moment for us because today world leaders are gathered together in a virtual meeting chaired by the Chilean government to launch a new phase of Mission Innovation. So this is a global coalition of countries committed to working together on research and innovation into the new clean energy technologies that are so vitally needed for us to achieve our climate goals. And what's really exciting today is that after 5 years since the Paris conference of Mission Innovation, when it was first launched, we've made huge progress with countries spending globally nearly $6 billion a year more on research and innovation into these key technologies. And today, in this big summit meeting that we've been holding, we've launched an exciting new agenda around 3 key headline objectives on clean hydrogen, a vital new sort of component of our clean energy landscape, on the power sector and how to use, we hope, up to 100% of renewable energy in the power sector, and also on some of the hard-to-abate issues like finding clean fuels for long-distance shipping. So a very exciting moment, and very happy to share the news with you today.
But, you know, it sounds like there's an awful lot to talk about, and these are topics that have been talked about a lot. So what's the real action plan? Talk me through where the world is failing and what needs to be done to fix it.
Well, I think the real challenge is to ensure that the technologies that we either already have or which we are developing through our research programs become affordable and commercially viable alongside the traditional fossil fuel alternatives. So, for example, if we've got a group of countries led by the European Commission, led by Chile, led by Australia, coming together around this agenda on hydrogen, it's to provide an alternative fuel for some of the heavy industry or long-distance transport, which today are vitally dependent on on fossil fuels. And what was really exciting today was to see that more and more countries are coming together, including the United States, which has come on board on this hydrogen mission, really to work together to drive down the costs of these technologies so that they become affordable and available to everyone in the world. And if you look at what's happened, for example, in the renewable sector, a few years ago, wind energy and photovoltaic were out of cost by comparison with traditional fossil fuels. Today, in many cases, it is even cheaper to produce wind energy and PV, and that's what we want to achieve in these new sectors. And we believe that by working together in this global coalition, we'll make progress.
But somebody's got to pay for it, Patrick, and it sounds like a little bit of a private sector fundraiser. So how much investment are you looking for to be able to invest in all these projects and to an extent that people collaborate enough to bring the cost down?
Well, it's vital that the public and the private sector work together. So if I'm talking about the achievements that we have realized already, the extra $5 or $6 billion a year that we're spending on publicly funded research and innovation. This is a sort of catalyst, a priming contribution, which is needed in order to bring down the costs and reduce the risks of investment by the private sector into these new sectors. So one very exciting development that we're announcing today with Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Bill Gates is a new partnership to bring together money that we can provide through the European Union's budget and money that then private sector coalition around Bill Gates will bring together to contribute to some key technologies. Hydrogen I've mentioned, sustainable aviation fuels is another, or long battery storage over the long term. And these are technologies which to some extent exist or are under development, but which need a boost, a top-up of capital from the public sector in order to make them viable and scale up and become available for everyone. And that's what we from the European Union budget and from the other partners in the Mission Innovation Coalition are able to bring.
It's ambitious, it's exciting. Patrick Child, thank you very much.
You're watching Global Business Europe. Stay with us. Still ahead, taste the difference. International wine sellers pour into China, hoping to benefit from growing demand.
More than 100,000 people in Italy have now died from COVID-19.
The vaccination programme offers some hope for the future, but intensive care units are near capacity.
The Spanish government is hoping to vaccinate over 1 million people by next month.
Living in Germany are struggling with their mental health.
Hungary is supplementing the EU's vaccine rollout, buying doses from Russia and China to speed up the process.
4 million people have tested positive in France.
After a grim winter, the promise of a spring bloom that could mean freedom for millions.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Oh, no. We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Juliet Mann and me, Paul Barber. The headlines again. The world's top two economies talk trade. China and the US agree on the importance of cooperation.
Hackers have launched a ransomware attack against the world's largest meat packer, JBS, shutting down production.
And the European Investment Bank has pledged $1 billion to the COVAX vaccine sharing programme. In the last half hour, it's been reported that Germany is blocking incoming flights from Russia in a tit-for-tat dispute over the worsening situation in Belarus. Russia has been banning flights by airlines that have stopped using Belarus airspace after the arrest of a dissident journalist, Roman Protasevich. He was captured after the forced grounding of a Ryanair flight in Minsk 10 days ago. Juliet Chapman joins us now live from Moscow. What can you tell us about this move by Germany?
Well, we've been hearing from their Federal Aviation Authority that says it will respond in kind to Russia's apparent blocking of German flights into Russia when they had notified Russia and its authorities of a new route that they would be taking to circumvent Belarusian airspace after a number of European countries said that their airlines would stop flying over Belarus in response to the Belarusian authorities diverting a passenger plane into Minsk in what appeared to be an effort to arrest an opposition blogger. And there had been a few Lufthansa flights that had been prevented from coming into Russia because they were trying to come in using a different flight path. There have also been some that have been coming into Russia and landing here in Moscow. There have been a similar issue with Air France as well. So Russia does appear to be inconsistently applying this blocking of flights, but certainly a lot of uncertainty now over the flight path of many routes that are coming from Europe into Russia and whether they will be allowed to do so. But Germany is now saying it will also block Russian flights coming in if German airlines aren't given permission to go into Russia.
And meanwhile, Julia, the deadline to charge Protasevich runs out at midnight. Are we any clearer on what's happening?
We're not. That's right. 10 days ago, Roman Protasevich, the opposition blogger, and his girlfriend, Sofia Sapega, who is a Russian citizen, were arrested when that Ryanair flight was diverted into Minsk. The charges against Sapega are unclear. We have some indication of what they might be against Protasevich because an investigation was launched in November last year against Protasevich and the co-founder, his other co-founder of the Next Telegram blog. They were being investigated on suspicion of inciting hatred and disrupting public order during the protest movement in Belarus last year. And of course, when Protasevich was arrested, there was a video released by some pro-government Telegram channels that appeared to show Protasevich confessing to disrupting public order. Now, his family says that that was a statement issued under duress, and there are certainly concerns that he may be being tortured in prison. But we don't yet have any clarity on that indictment, nor about the charges that could come against Sofia Sapega, but we do understand that she will be charged in Belarus rather than being extradited to Russia.
Julia Chapman in Moscow, thank you.
Israeli opposition leaders have less than 5 hours to form a coalition government. If a deal is done, it will end Benjamin Netanyahu's 12-year run as Prime Minister. Well, Stephanie Freed joins us now from Tel Aviv. Hello there, Stephanie. So let's talk deals. What's on the table and how close are they to reaching an agreement?
Impossible to know how close, first of all, because the rumors or the word that's been coming out of the negotiations that have been ongoing intensely for the past 24 hours, it's been like a day of roller coaster rides, back and forth, up and down, positive, negative. Some of the deals that we know that are on the table, I mean, from the outset, this Change coalition was built on the fact that the centrist party leader, Yair Lapid of Yesh Atid, he reached out to Yamina party leader, which is far right, the leader there, Naftali Bennett, and basically offered him, you can be prime minister first, I'll be prime minister second, if you join the Change coalition. So going into this coalition, that's the deal between those two. Also, we're hearing reports of perhaps another rotation and also a back and forth. There were disputes between, again, another far right-wing party member versus far left-wing party member over the judiciary panel, which is important. That's about choosing judges. The report that we're getting now is that possibly they have come to some sort of agreement also over rotation. Well, when you look at the makeup of this change coalition, they're looking for change, looking essentially to unseat Benjamin Netanyahu. But the makeup is so vastly different in terms of the ideologies and the parties and the members involved, from far left party, the Ram party, that's part of the Islamist movement, and then off to the right. I mentioned Naftali Bennett of Yamina. He used to head the settlement movement, which favors Jewish settlers occupying Palestinian land. So to bring all those ideologies together to form a coalition, well, that indeed demands change.
Thing is, Stephanie, I mean, the clock is ticking. Just very quickly, I mean, what happens if they don't meet this deadline?
If they don't meet the deadline, when you look at the protocol and what happens, the mandate goes back to the Knesset or the Israeli parliament. There are 21 days there for virtually any parliament member to try and form a government. That's highly unlikely. What's more likely is that Israel will go to a fifth election in 2 years. And then that would be a 90-day period after the 21-day period, which brings us calendar-wise to around October, November, because it's 90 days, 90 working days. So that's skipping weekends, that's skipping holidays, which October, November, that means Israel would be without a functioning government for another half year. Again, the Change Coalition was trying to bring function into what they say is a long-standing, of years, dysfunctional government.
Oh, not another election. Stephanie Fried in Tel Aviv, thank you. Rising poverty and fewer decent jobs. It's a stark assessment by the International Labour Organization, which expects global unemployment to reach almost 6% by 2022. Now, the ILO says that this year there'll be the equivalent of 100 million fewer full-time jobs. That's compared to before the pandemic. Now, that shortfall is expected to drop to 26 million next year. By 2022, world unemployment is expected to top 200 million. That's 9% higher than pre-pandemic levels. The Agenda's Stephen Cole spoke to the ILO's Director General, Guy Ryder.
Well, 2020 was the biggest crisis in the world of work in modern times. To give you some sort of comparison, the impact on jobs and incomes was about 4 times greater than in the financial crisis of 2008-2009. Looked at that way, we're digging ourselves out of quite a deep hole, I'm afraid. And what the report we're launching today looks at is how the recovery process is likely to go. And looking forward from here to the end of next year, the end of 2022, I think the message is that the recovery, though important, will be incomplete. We won't be back to where we started from. But perhaps even more important than that is the unevenness of this recovery. Some are going to do quite well. Others are going to have a very hard time of it.
Now it's billed as Russia's answer to Davos. Thousands of officials and executives are gathering this week for the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. Among the countries represented will be China, Russia's top trading partner. Alyosha Mlenkovich reports.
This is Russia's prime quality Angus beef. Packed, stacked, and kept in a cold environment in this storage facility in Moscow, ready to be shipped to China. It is produced in Voronezh, some 500 kilometers south of Moscow, in an eco-clean and pristine environment. In the middle of a rampaging epidemic, the company that produces these prime steaks started exports to China.
Our processing capacity is 40,000 tons per year, and our expectations for this year are to export around 2,500 tons. And if we are looking forward to the next year, those figures could be better, depending on how the Chinese market accepts our products.
This isn't the only example of a Russian company which has started exporting to China. Most of those new exporters focus on agricultural products, which Russia is producing more and more of. As a result of this increased interest in China's market, Agricultural exports from Russia rose by 17.6% in the first quarter of this year alone. And last year, Russian beef exports to China just exploded with a 25-fold increase.
Trade volume is increasing at cosmic-like speeds. Compared with last year, or even until the coronavirus pandemic started, it's like the sky and the earth. It's being seen even in areas with more exporting difficulties due to laws and regulations, like meat and milk exports.
Exporters of other food products like chocolate and candy have far fewer regulatory hurdles for exporting to China, and they are using those opportunities. Overall trade between China and Russia in 2020 reached just over 107 billion US dollars, and 25% of that figure was traded in the national currencies. The pandemic just sped up both processes, which will have a massive positive impact on their economies at the end of the day. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, St. Petersburg.
The largest vessel in Iran's navy, the warship Karg, has caught fire and sunk in the Gulf of Oman. The blaze is thought to have broken out in the early hours of Wednesday while the vessel was on a training mission. No explanation has been given over the possible cause of the blaze, but it has been reported that all the crew escaped unharmed after a lengthy rescue operation.
A cargo ship carrying chemicals is sinking off Sri Lanka's west coast, stoking fears of a major environmental disaster. The Singapore-registered Express Pearl has been on fire for almost 2 weeks. Since then, tons of plastic pellets have swamped the island's coastline and fishing grounds. If it sinks, hundreds of tons of oil from its fuel tanks could leak out.
A herd of 15 migrating elephants in southwest China have defied efforts to divert them. The animals have been crossing Yunnan province over the last few days and are closing in on the provincial capital, Kunming. It's not clear why the elephants are on the move, though experts say a recent rise in their population and a decline in edible plants could have caused the migration. In Afghanistan, serious gender inequality remains a reality after decades of war. Women's rights, including the right to an education, are still opposed by many in what's a deeply conservative nation.
In this exclusive report, CGTN's Jack Barton went to meet two sisters who co-founded a university.
Simin Shams hails from a prominent Afghan family, and like many other wealthy children here, she could have left the country. She admits to considering it until age 16, when she thought of all the other girls in the country who weren't as lucky.
I stopped thinking about going abroad for my studies and decided to create an environment for everyone that I wanted for myself, a university that can offer trust, security, and credibility. I thought I had to build it.
Build it she did, with help from her sister, who, like Simin, went on to get a degree at the university they founded.
I think we've built the first women-led private university in Afghan history.
Her goal now is to ensure equal representation for women among faculty, staff and students, a goal that makes a difference far beyond the campus grounds.
Afghanistan has witnessed war for a long time. It needs progress just like other countries. It needs women doctors because there are many rural areas who don't allow their wives to go to a male doctor.
When the Taliban ruled Afghanistan, people lived in poverty. There was no access to modern medicine, no political stability or freedom of expression. And without any doubt, those who suffered most were women, who were banned from leaving the house. Education for women was out of the question. It's still a tough sell in this deeply conservative nation.
A female founder in an educational organization helps attract more women to education. Families with tough restrictions on their daughters can know that there are institutions that can be trusted.
Simin's sister Setara now runs her own skincare center. She wants beauty to fill the void of the rigid intolerance peddled by the Taliban.
When I come here, I forget the problems at the university, the political issues of the country, everything. It clears my mind.
Both sisters worry about a peace deal with the Taliban that hands too much power to the group. Even now, Simin must travel in a bulletproof car. There is always an armed guard present. After work each day, Simin spends time with her horses.
I totally forget about stress of university, stress of the problems of country, politics, everything. I just clear from my mind.
A brief respite. For despite the incredible achievements Simin and women like her have achieved in Afghanistan, she says the real work has only just begun. Jack Barton, Mazar-e-Sharif, Afghanistan.
UK lockdown conditions are slowly easing just as temperatures rise, and some lucky Londoners have been cooling off in the city's new Sky Pool. The transparent 25-metre swimming pool is suspended between two high-rise buildings and is the biggest structure of its kind in the world. Swimmers with a head for heights can get panoramic views across the River Thames. To see more, go to europe.cgtn.com. And remember, CGTN is available to watch for free on all the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion and on CGTN.com and the CGTN app.
You're watching CGTN. Still to come, Italy targets cleaner, greener beaches as business owners aim to lure back the summer tourists.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you. All around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Beijing's wine lovers can sample some of the world's best vintages as an international wine expo kicks off in the Chinese capital.
The event has been delayed for nearly 2 years because of the pandemic, but as CGTN's Liu Jiaxin reports, thirst hasn't been dampened.
Look, smell and taste. A bottle of wine has never been too far from our reach, even during the height of the global pandemic. Months of restrictions may have put a damper on travel, but for many, it hasn't stopped the desire to drink.
Between bottles, it's not hard to find that China's imported wine market has been back to its bustle and hustle. Exhibitors from countries like France, Italy, Spain, and Israel have all expressed their confidence in Chinese market, even amid the pandemic.
So I called my partner and say, it's a chance actually to be in China because China controls the COVID
is very, very good compared to European countries.
China's rapid economic recovery and the withdrawal of Australian wine have given Italian wine a big opportunity. Our diverse products are suitable for the Chinese market.
In the first 4 months of 2020, China's wine imports fell by a quarter in both quantity and amount, compared to the same period in 2019. Suffering from the initial trauma of COVID-19, International Wine and Spirits Research predicts total global alcohol sales will not return to pre-pandemic levels until 2024. But according to the Wine Intelligence Report, home isolation did not reduce the frequency of alcohol consumption. Instead, they say people resorted to liquor to relieve stress during hard times.
During the pandemic, because the people want to enjoy, because closed at home, so you need to do something, so they drink more than before.
Industry insiders say the virus has forced a reshuffle in the industry, but it's also presented some favorable opportunities. Online retail in China has helped to stabilize the fortunes of many overseas vintners and taught them the great value of digital. Liu Jiaxing, CGTN, Beijing.
Italy's beaches are getting cleaner. A record number have been given the prestigious Blue Flag classification this year for high water quality and environmental initiatives. Business owners hope it will help attract much-needed crowds back to Italy's shores. Hermione Kitson reports from the coastal region of Lazio.
This year, the prestigious Blue Flag is flying proudly across 416 Italian beaches. For beach club owner Davide Camorotta, it's recognition of years of hard work.
It's as if it is a medal. This work is my life, because the beach club has been in my family since forever, and this award gives us an important opportunity to restart.
A record number of new entries are in Italy's central south, such as Pescara in Abruzzo and Mintorno in Lazio. The flags are awarded by the Foundation for Environmental Education, an independent organisation comprising 77 countries worldwide.
There are 32 criteria that need to be respected. First of all, water quality, quality of the services, and environmental initiatives such as bike and pedestrian paths.
It means attention to the environment, for example, waste management and curating green spaces. It also means educational programs in schools about sustainability.
The region of Liguria once again claimed top spot with 32 beaches, followed by Campania with 19 and Tuscany and Puglia with 17. Abruzzo recorded 3 new entries to have 13 blue flags. The FEE says community cooperation is fundamental.
The objective to obtain and retain the blue flag is the responsibility of the whole community, business owners, the council and citizens.
The annual awards come as Italy's beaches open for the season, and it's hoped the Blue Flag classifications will help boost the government's campaign to attract tourists. As the COVID infection rate falls, the Prime Minister has declared Italy open to international visitors with the Green Pass. By mid-June, most regions should be classified as low-risk white zones.
Tourists will return, and I think in much higher numbers than last year, absolutely.
High hopes for a summer that resembles pre-pandemic times. Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Rome.
Our headlines again. More trade talks between the world's top 2 economies. China and the US agree on the importance of cooperation.
Hackers have launched a ransomware attack against the world's largest meat packer, JBS, shutting down production.
And Russia says Germany has banned its airlines from entering as a tit-for-tat dispute escalates over the arrest of a journalist in Belarus.
And that's Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching. More on all our stories at europe.cgtn.com. And follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
We're available to watch on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion and, of course, CGTN.com and the CGTN app. Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all the team here in London, goodbye.
Bye-bye.